everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Roger. I'm Diana Guvertz, and once again, we are here with Roger Etner of Recon Analytics. Hey, Roger.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. I'm excited to chat with you today about a couple things that are going on in the world. And the first one is, you know what it is?
ONAP.
Yes, ONAP. I am so excited to chat about it. It's some new stuff that's going on with eComp, and I want to get your thoughts on it and see what you're thinking there, where that's going to lead. So if you want to go ahead and kick off.
Well, the Linux Foundation announced that eComp, which is AT&T's open networking NFV open standard project, is getting together with OpenO, which is the same plan and the same thing from the Chinese carriers, China Mobile in particular. And so this basically creates the de facto standard for NFV and SDN in the world, because already those two camps represent for, a quarter of the globe's subscribers. More than 1.5 billion people are using or committed using this as their SDN and NFV standard. So it's a huge success from how quickly this emerged, and AT&T has really pushed this very hard. They have more than a third of their network on SDN now. With 8.5 million lines of code, the Chinese with China Mobile have about 800,000 lines of code, and so it's basically the number one and the number two party that's doing SDN getting together, and nobody else has anything that's working right now. So the question is, if you are thinking about SDN, why not adopt this? Because I don't think anybody will be able to catch up in terms of how many carriers and how many people will use this, and so it's a really big success for everybody involved.
So let's just take a look at kind of AT&T's role here. I mean, they've been a big proponent of NFV and SDN on their own network. I mean, what does this mean for their position in terms of leadership in that space? I mean, they've kind of been pushing the eComp platform really hard and have been successful with it. I mean, is this the same type of advantage that, somebody might get on the network side, because this is going to be the future of networks?
Well, it's the future of networks. It helps with interoperability. It helps with creating an ecosphere where third parties can come in and can launch services with it. It helps with lowering the cost of maintaining and expanding the base. I thought what was really great is that AT&T, which has been leading here with eComp, has been able to work together with carriers that haven't done it yet, plus carriers that have already experience with SDN, like China Mobile, and have been able to come together for actually the greater good. It shows a lot of maturity and the lack of, it's my open source. Open source is open for everybody, and it really shows that there is a real mind shift going on within the carriers, going away from very proprietary solutions to open solutions where all ships rise with the tides, and I think it's great.
Can you speak at all to the pace of adoption? I mean, we heard about the first trials. I think it was Orange Polska is going to be trialing the eComp platform. And I think there are a couple other players who are putting it online to see how it works. Can you speak at all to the pace of adoption of SDN NFV and what that means for the industry going forward?
Well, you have AT&T as really the poster child of SDN and NFV. nobody has put as much on a virtualized basis as the company out of Dallas. And Orange, which is working at times very closely with AT&T, is implementing it and launching it in Poland, which is their biggest market outside France, followed by Bell Canada, and they were once upon a time they were very close. I think AT&T even owned a part of Bell Canada, so they're old relationships, and they are trying to implement that. And it makes a lot of sense as you are north and south of the border to make this work and more interoperable. But now you bring in the Chinese, who have been not as far ahead as AT&T with about 1/10 of the code base, but further ahead than anybody else. And they're like, well, let's pool our things together. And that gives you such a huge base. And that forced all the vendor community, Huawei, CTE, Ericsson, which just did an announcement on SDN with Verizon, by the way, this week, which was also interesting, said we're part of this. Tech Mahindra, you name it. And it's my understanding that a lot more people are looking at this, and a lot more companies are looking at it, to jump on board, because if you have that early in the stage, a quarter of global subscribers on the same standard, you're creating so much momentum that it's inevitable that this is the snowball that's really starting. And it's probably everybody was like, oh wow, this escalated quickly, and I think it will only gain momentum. It's a win-win for everybody involved.
Okay, then we're going to have to watch that snowball continue to grow. I do want to pivot briefly to unpack some of the announcements that came out just ahead of Mobile World Congress. There was a whole slew of them. There's no way we can get to them all. But some of the ones that stood out in my mind were the 2 announcements from Qualcomm and Intel around the Gigabit LTE modems. And then there was an announcement from AT&T about trials using DirecTV Now on 39 gigahertz, which is a little bit different than the 28 tests we've seen. And then T-Mobile said that they're going to be launching LTE on their network this spring because the FCC just approved the first devices. So I want to unpack some of those with you, starting with the Gigabit LTE modems. I mean, what kind of change do you think we'll see on the networks with these kinds of modems? What kind of network changes needs to be instituted before these modems can really make a difference?
Well, I think in the US, overseas, they will be a lot more quickly adopted because you have much bigger channel configurations than in the US. You have 20 by 20s, often 40 by 40s, so packing together 2 by 2, 20 by 20s. And with carrier aggregations, if you put bigger channels together, you get a lot bigger pipe. So that helps dramatically. Here in the US, we typically have 5 by 5 and 10 by 10 channel configurations. Gluing them together makes a much smaller pipe. We've seen some of the carriers making deals with each other, flipping which channel block they have, so to create larger channels. In the US, the adoption will be it will be there, but less, because the spectrum that you have to play with is more fragmented, because in their august wisdom, the FCC decided small channel sizes would drive competition, which hasn't really been the case. It only led to fragmentation and cheats American consumers from having faster internet, because you don't have the big 20 by 20s or 40 by 40 type of channel configurations. So I think, it's great that these are coming. It's helping, but the channel configuration has to follow suit. We'll see. Hopefully, as they go through the incentive auction, there is a lot more focus on creating large channel blocks rather than fragmenting it again.
Okay. So speaking of large channel blocks, I want to turn then to AT&T's 39 gigahertz tests with DirecTV Now. One of the things they said about their testing at 39 was that it offered a significantly bigger block that they could use. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are there. Where is 39 in comparison to 28 or 37? I mean, all three of those are in the range that the FCC opened up. But I'm just wondering what your thoughts are there, I mean, in terms of maybe propagation or any other characteristics.
Well, all of these channel blocks have to work with water and oxygen attenuation. And so the higher up you go in the spectrum, the more power you have to put in to get the same propagation parts. So doing 39 is really small cells. But 26 and 24 is also small cells, but it's a tiny little bit smaller. And then it always depends on how much spectrum you own there. Just because it's there doesn't mean you can necessarily use it. And you know, AT&T has spectrum in 39, Verizon has it in 27. So you use what you have. But there are no big differences between them besides, you know, the power and range trade-off that you take by going higher up.
Is it at all significant that they specifically tested DirecTV Now? I mean, does that to you indicate that they're looking to launch more content-heavy services? Are they looking to expand this even further? I mean, what does it tell you?
Well, the spectrum or the network killer is video. If you can make video run, everything else will run too. And yes, you know, a company that bought DirecTV, launched DirecTV Now, and said, "Oh, we want to have like what? We want this to be our dominant delivery standard in the next 5 years," and who's buying Time Warner, of course they're gonna do video. You know, they're spending $143 billion on video. Of course, you know, everything they do goes around delivering video, because if video works, everything else will work too. So yeah, I don't think that's a secret. So like, well, what could it be? You know, video, maybe.
Okay.
Follow the money.
We will follow the money. Last question that I want to turn you to is T-Mobile and the LTE. We've kind of been expecting this for a while. They were really one of the big pushers behind the standards alongside Qualcomm and Verizon. And now that the standards are out and the FCC has finally certified them, actually, it came in the same day. The FCC certified and T-Mobile said, boom, we're rolling it out. So, I mean, they are looking to utilize, I think they said 20 megahertz of unlicensed spectrum. What does this say to you? What kind of difference will this make in their network? Any thoughts?
Look at the whole wave towards unlimited, and now upping it to HD unlimited. That's 5 times more capacity, more spectrum that you need, you know, to deliver it over 5 in HD than over standard. That spectrum has to come from somewhere, and T-Mobile has the least amount of spectrum of all the 4 nationwide carriers, and if they don't have to buy it, awesome. You know, they will probably. I expect them to win 10 or 20 megahertz in the 600 band, but that still doesn't close the gap. So the 20 megahertz from LTE Unlimited is going to be more than welcome in scenarios where there's a lot of congestion, and then they can use the unlimited band. I'm surprised that Verizon hasn't announced anything yet, because they were both very strong advocates of it. And both said, even before the announcement, when the announcement comes, we will do it. I think T-Mobile has used that occasion, to re-emphasize it again and show, look, we're doing all these nifty things. The only thing I missed was like the crying you from the Wi-Fi community. But, well, it's unlicensed usage, which means everybody can use it.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's a welcome development. And, unlimited, welcome.
Well, I was thinking, since you mentioned Verizon, that when I spoke to them last month, they said that they were in the process of testing LTE devices, but they did have a roadmap for LAA for this year. So I'm wondering, what's the comparison there? I mean, what kind of advantage will that give Verizon? I mean, will it, shake things up at all, or?
Well, it's two different ways to achieving the same thing. I think there isn't really a big difference with assisted. You have more of a global community behind it. LTU is more of an insular solution. So you have a little bit more of a time to market advantage with LTU, but it would help them on a global basis if they do the assist route. So minor differences. I think T-Mobile feels a lot more the scarcity of spectrum. It has very fast data speeds, but all of us can draw a line, and we know when data speeds, when they become a victim of their own success. They have been the ones that have grown the fastest, which means they will also feel the constraints of having a congested network first. They haven't had these experiences yet, but I think Neville does the very prudent thing and plans for the day, plans ahead rather than afterwards, and tries to catch up. And I think that's what we see here.
All right. Well, then we'll keep an eye on that rollout, definitely. And you and I are going to have plenty to talk about after Mobile World Congress ends this week. So I'm looking forward to getting back with you after the show. I think that is all the time we have for today, though. Of course, I have to run. You know where I have to be. So then we will see you after the show. Roger, thank you again so much for taking the time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. We'll see you next week.